Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. I'm so glad to have you with us today. We've talked before about the powerful, invisible, and unconscious energy forces that are constantly at work in our lives and that are intimately involved in shaping who we are. Included in these forces that shape us are our emotions. They impact our lives, organize our sense of self, and structure all of our interactions with one another. But for one reason or another, these emotions, with their specific vibrational energies, often get trapped or stuck. And when lodged in the body, these little balls of energy can interfere with our body's designed ability to function normally. But think about this. What if we could tap into our body's inherently designed capacity and desire to heal? What if there's a way to unlock the restorative power of our conscious minds, releasing our emotional baggage, this trapped emotional energy that causes dysfunction within our body? Well, that's the very focus of our time together today. In fact, we're going to take a deep dive into the practical experiential techniques, strategies, and constructs of a healing process that can help you unlock stuck emotions and achieve your inherent potential. And we're going to be doing that today with a return guest. Let me introduce him to you. His name is Dr. Brad Nelson, one of the world's foremost experts on bioenergetic medicine and energy psychology, helping folks overcome physical and emotional discomfort by releasing their emotional baggage by providing a step-by-step methodology for working with their body's emotional healing power. Brad, I want to welcome you to our show. It's so nice to have you back.
Well, it's really, really great to be back, Graham. Thank you for having me back.
That's wonderful. Hey, I want our listeners in today's show to have an experiential sense of what you do with the folks that come to see those that you train. I know right now you're doing the majority of things you're doing are training folks in this whole code and this whole approach to healing that is really quite wonderful. And I want, if we could, to have you walk me through what a practitioner would be doing with me if I were to go to see them, one that you've trained, from the assessment phase through the treatment phase, and your specific techniques and strategies. But before we do this, if we could, let's re-anchor our listeners, if we could, Brad, with you giving us kind of a foundational, kind of brief overview, understanding of emotions as energy. Energy is frequencies, actually, and how emotional energy can get trapped.
Absolutely. Well, if you think about Albert Einstein for just a moment and you reflect on how smart he was, he said many, many, many years ago, the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. He understood what our bodies really are, and that is energy. And so everything, like Nikola Tesla, another very smart guy, said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So what I found during those years that I was in practice was a couple of really important things. One thing is that because I had been a computer programmer before I became a doctor, it enabled me to understand that the subconscious mind, that part of our mind that is really running the body and keeping the air moving in and out of our lungs and creating millions of new cells every minute and so on, that part of us is a computer. It's a binary computer. It can be queried. We can ask questions of it, and we can get answers from it. And those answers will manifest typically. The simplest way to get that information is through some form of muscle testing, because when the subconscious mind is giving back a yes answer to a query, the body will be normally strong. If the body's giving back, or if the subconscious mind is giving back a no answer, the body will be a little bit weaker. And so we can pick up those answers through muscle testing and get yeses and nos out of this incredibly powerful, really incomprehensibly powerful computer that exists within us. So as far as emotions go, here's what happens to us. We feel emotions all the time, right? And I mean, if you were to try to imagine for a moment living in a world with no emotions at all, there wouldn't be any highs or any lows. It would just be kind of a flat, barren, kind of a gray existence, not worth living, because we're emotional beings, and animals are too, actually, and which we now know. Well, what happens to us is that we go through this little process. When we experience an emotion, there's some kind of a stimulus that occurs Maybe we see something or think something or hear something. Maybe we read something, whatever it is, a certain emotion starts to come up for us. And that's a particular frequency of vibration. And normally what happens is an emotion comes up for us, and we do this multiple times every day, and we just simply acknowledge that emotional feeling, and then we allow it to dissipate its energy and go away. But sometimes we interrupt that normal process. Sometimes an emotion is coming up for us, and sometimes we decide, no, that's a bad emotion. I'm not going to go there. And so rather than allowing that emotion to be expressed and then dissipate its energy, we stop the process and we bury that emotion. We stuff that emotion. So now that energy is essentially trapped in the body. Another thing that we do when this emotional cycle is trying to express is that we decide, gee, not only am I going to feel resentment or anger or whatever it is, but I'm going to enhance that and I'm going to amplify that. And I'm going to get really upset. That also interrupts that normal process, that rise and fall of that emotional energy. So now it becomes too much. And that also results in this energy that now is kind of in suspended animation in the body. So a trapped emotion is a little ball of energy from about the size of a baseball, about the size of maybe a softball, and these can lodge anywhere in the body. And so when I was in practice, what I found was that all of my patients had this phenomenon going on. And when I would identify these by talking to this internal computer of theirs, and when I released these energies, all kinds of things improved. I saw pain go away instantly. In fact, we now know that about 90% of the pain that people have is actually due to emotional baggage. So that's trapped emotions. That was the beginning for me, really. And as time went on, just to kind of tie the whole thing together, you mentioned the Emotion Code, which is the first book that I wrote, came out in 2007. And then in 2019, we had the Body Code book that came out. And now we have a new level of certification that we call the Belief Code. Just to kind of make this make sense for everybody, during those years that I was in practice, because I was a computer programmer and because I had figured out how to communicate with the subconscious minds of my patients, their computers, I always had a computer there with me in my office as I was working with people year after year. And as I would communicate with their subconscious minds, trying to figure out why they were sick or why they were having all these different symptoms, what I found was that as I was finding new imbalances, I called them, or the underlying things that were blocking them from being totally well, physically, mentally, emotionally, I would categorize those. So eventually I came up with thousands of different kinds of imbalances that people suffer from, and I was able to categorize all of them into 6 categories. So that's really what we now call the Body Code, which is an app that we call the Body Code System. Of course, it's a book by that name. And with that, what you're able to do is you're able to use the subconscious mind to find out where the imbalances are that are going on in your own body that are contributing to your depression and anxiety and sicknesses. And, it's basically a way to find the things that are in the way of your body's ability to heal. The way that I look at the body is that the human body has this very, very powerful innate desire to be totally healthy in all ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. But there are things that get in the way, blocks that get in the way, things like pathogens and misalignments and toxins and emotional baggage and traumas and all kinds of things. And the Body Code is a way to simply identify those. Think of it this way. We've had this incomprehensibly powerful computer within each one of us all along. Finally, now in the 21st century, we have an interface so that we can communicate with that internal system and ask questions and find out what's going on. Is your liver balanced? Is it happy? Is your heart happy? What about your colon? I mean, we can find out about imbalances and clear those imbalances and correct those. So there's nothing in the body's way of actually being healthy because the body heals itself. So the Belief Code, just to wrap this up, is a new level of certification for us. It's our 3rd level of certification for our practitioners. And what it is it's a way to identify, again, using this subconscious mind, this internal computer, to identify negative belief systems that we have.
Mm.
And a negative belief system may consist of the roots, which we would call a faulty core belief, and then maybe a trunk. It's kind of like a tree.
Yes.
The trunk might be limiting beliefs, and then the branches and leaves might be what we call negative programs. You're able to identify all of those. And so this system has thousands of negative statements in it, and the subconscious mind will guide you to whatever those statements are, and then you can release those. We're having phenomenal success with that as well. And I think we talked about that a tiny bit maybe on the
Yeah, we
last
did.
show.
We
Yeah.
did. Yeah. Yeah. I would encourage, as you just remind us of that piece, I would encourage our listeners to go back and listen to that episode. It was a really dynamic show together around describing the very things you're giving us a nice overview of right now. Energy can be thought of as frequencies, and emotional energy can be trapped. And the subconscious mind holds this trauma, and our brain knows what the body needs to heal. Our bodies have a self-actualizing process, potential to heal. But if those things get trapped unconsciously, then it's a good question you're raising. Sometimes when we go through emotions, we take them and we almost accelerate them. They become, overt, and we kind of turn up the volume. There are
Right.
other emotions that we kind of internalize. And that process oftentimes, I think, is more kind of an unconscious process, that these emotions are held there, but the body protects us. We got a great defense mechanism. It protects us from intolerable things. Speaking of
Right.
that, what are some of the
Mhm.
causes have you found? Some of the major causes? You mentioned a couple, but just say them again. Some of the causes for
Mhm.
trapped emotional energy.
Well, basically, it boils down to those two situations where, well, really, we'll say three. One of those is where an emotion comes up and you decide to bury it. Maybe, for example, a person's father was a rageaholic. And so they learn at an early age that that emotion of anger is a really bad emotion. They shouldn't ever go there. So later in life, somebody does them wrong, and that emotion starts to come up as a natural consequence, but they decide they're not going to go there because that's a bad emotion. So they don't allow it to be expressed.
Very
And
good.
so then when they stuff that emotion, that energy's trapped in the body. Sometimes things happen to us that are so emotionally
Mhm.
shocking and overwhelming, we don't really have much control. And so, your mother dies or some terrible thing happens to someone or to you, and the emotional energy is just naturally very powerful. That energy can become trapped in the body as well, just because it's so overpowering. But then the other time that we develop trapped emotions is when we make a conscious choice to really amplify that energy and we become really upset. So those are typically the ways that we create these. The beautiful thing, though, is with the emotion code, we can find those. The emotion code is part of the body code, by the way. And what's interesting about the belief code is that the way that we do it is we actually will identify a whole negative belief system that a person has about whatever it might be. Maybe it's about money or relationships or love or who knows, or health. And once we identify that that whole entire tree, which consists of multiple negative statements,
Mhm.
once we identify those, then we go to the belief code and we find the trapped emotions or traumas or whatever it might be in the belief code that are actually giving power to this whole belief system. We'll release those, and then we'll come back and we'll release those other energies. And then we'll ask if we might need to put in something positive. There are 3,000 beliefs in the belief system. And so the subconscious mind will guide you to whatever belief that it needs. And so that's basically how that works. So with the belief code now, we really have a complete system of healing, and they all really tie together.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Continuing education is both a requirement and a learning opportunity, but finding the right CE provider can be challenging. AATBS, a triad company, offers continuing education for psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, counselors, and behavior analysts. CE courses are available both individually and as part of our new All Access Pass. All Access Pass provides a library of over 250 unique courses. That's more than 800 hours of CEs, with new courses being added every month. As a special offer, Behavioral Health Today listeners can save 15% on CE purchases. Visit us at aatbs.com/BHT and enter promo code BHT15 during checkout. That's aatbs.com/BHT. Check out our library and check off your CE requirements today.
Yeah, really good. I appreciate that. Really nice overview and how it just kind of flows into each other. I want to transition off of that. So the three levels of the emotional healing process, there are three specific codes: the emotion code, and that's breaking free from emotional baggage. There's the body code, where you're talking about unlocking your inner knowledge, and the belief code, where you're releasing these negative belief systems that can kind of get trapped and hold us in this state of unwellness, of dis-ease, and prevent us from really reaching our potential and also causing other illnesses. So with this good foundation, let's transition just a wee bit. I want to kind of illustrate here, or kind of walk our listeners through. If
Right.
I'm a patient going to see
Mhm.
one of your practitioners that you've
Mhm.
trained, the many, many that you've trained, I know you have this method that you've taught them that they're going to help me find and correct the root cause of these trapped emotions and these imbalances in minutes with the simplest, easiest energy healing methods. So I'm scheduling my first appointment with them.
Mhm.
Walk me through what I'm going to be experiencing in our work together.
Mhm. Okay. Well, first of all, our practitioners around the world, I would say that their practices and their methodologies may differ a little bit depending on, what prior training they've had or what they're integrating in with this work that we do. But typically what would happen is you make an appointment with someone that may be for a live actual office visit with somebody. And we've certified over 12,000 emotion code practitioners in over 80 countries around the world. And
That's
so
great.
it varies, but typically what might happen is and I'll tell you how I used to do it when I was actually taking patients when I was in practice. What I would do, especially if someone had any kind of a serious health concern going on or serious symptoms, one of the things that I would do is I would use muscle testing to check the balance to see how well the organs and the glands in the body were working. And this is different from Western medicine. Instead of doing lab tests, what we would do is I would check to see if the organs and the glands in the body were actually happy or content. And that might sound really strange, but if you think about this, in ancient Chinese medicine, that they looked at the body and they looked at the organs and the glands in the body as different officials in this kingdom of the body.
Yeah.
And there were all these interrelationships. This organ was subservient to this gland and vice versa and so on. And I think what it comes down to is what I believe is that everything has intelligence. Plants are intelligent. The organs and the glands in the body are intelligent. And what I found in my practice was that I could ask organs and glands if they were content or happy. If they weren't, then that would lead me to find the underlying causes of why those organs or glands weren't happy. And the same thing applies to the chakras and the meridians of the body. We can find those imbalances. And so what I would do is I would check all the organs, all the glands, all the meridians, the chakras, and that would give me a pretty good idea of what kind of a state this person's body is in. And then, because the subconscious mind knows and can prioritize, just like a search engine, which essentially is what it is, and this is what we teach our practitioners, we would ask your subconscious mind where we need to go first. And so it may be that if you're, for example, trained in belief code, it may be that that's the first thing that you might need. So in that case, we would try to identify a negative belief system that maybe has to do with your health, and then clear that out. Maybe you believe that you need to be sick because maybe you believe you need to be punished because maybe something happened when you were younger or whatever it is. So it would depend on what was going on with the person. Now, sometimes if a person is dealing with something else, maybe someone comes to see me because they're having a hard time with relationships. And again, I don't see patients anymore, but in speaking as if I were one of our practitioners, if someone comes to see me and they're having a hard time, maybe they're 40 years old and they've never had a long-term relationship and they're still alone and they don't know why, and they're beginning to suspect maybe something's wrong with them, we might find out that they've got a heart wall. And so they put up a wall around their heart that's blocking them from love. And so then we would work to remove that emotional baggage surrounding their heart. Maybe a person is dealing with depression or anxiety, and typically the heart wall would be the number one place where we would find those kinds of issues as well.
Is you're finding those, Brad, and you talk about they're found and they're kind of discovered in a very important way. What does muscle testing look like?
Well, it depends. If you're working with someone at a distance, then a proxy connection would be made. The subconscious mind has this ability built right within it to set aside its own needs to act on behalf of someone else. So typically what that would look like, if I were working with you, for example, Graham, I might be doing muscle testing that might look like this, where I make a connection with you energetically, and those energies become entangled, which we know about from quantum physics. And then I would be asking questions, and the responses from your subconscious mind would come to my subconscious mind, and those answers would manifest on my own body as strong for yes and weak for no.
And
And
what
so
you're
this
doing right
is,
now for our listeners is you're putting your pointer finger and your thumb together and you're putting them into
yeah,
overlapping rings. And you're
overlapping
pulling apart.
rings,
Yes.
tugging on those rings. And that's one method of testing where we teach a whole bunch of them, but that's one way that we can get answers even at a distance.
Yeah.
And so then if I'm working on you at a distance and I find an imbalance, I can release that by just passing a magnet or my hand from my forehead over the top of my head to the back of my neck a few times to
Right.
release that energy. And it works just as well at a distance as it does live and in person. So welcome to the 21st century. But this is all quantum physics. It's the practical application really of quantum physics. And like Einstein said, the future of medicine is going to be the medicine of frequencies. And now we're beginning to understand what that looks like. And it's not like anything we've ever seen before.
Right.
Very different.
So that would be you being able to see somebody around the world, somebody, virtually like we're doing right now, even in this interview. If I'm in your office, what's the muscle testing look like there?
Well, I might have you hold out one arm in front of you, parallel to the floor, and I might press down on your outstretched arm as I'm asking questions of your subconscious mind. And your arm would say strong for yes, and it might weaken for no.
Got it.
So we would be asking questions. And the beautiful thing about this work is that it's as simple and as efficient as we can possibly make it, because we're asking questions of a binary computer, which can only answer yes or no.
Yeah. So there is a simple elegance to this, and I like simple. Simple allows
Me
us
too.
to diagnose something, to get in there, to detect it, and then to intervene. So let's talk about the intervention piece. So you're saying, let's say there's something about a heart wall that's up, maybe because there's trauma in the past, disappointment, maybe there's some depression and anxiety, loss, rejection, all those things. And there's a heart wall there, understandably, to be protective. But we always know that walls, while they protect, also keep good and healthy people from coming in and corrective experiences to be had. So I'm living only in my fear of, rather than an opportunity to let something new and corrective be allowed in and for myself to grow. Walls also inhibit growth. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will. So given that, we want that wall to come down. And what do we do then?
Well, if a person has a heart wall, then basically the process is almost entirely the same as releasing a regular trapped emotion for someone. And so the way that works is we have the emotion code chart, which has 60 emotions in it. It's divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. And if you're there with me live and in person, I might test directly on your body and have you hold your arm out parallel to the floor. And then I might ask, okay, can we release an emotion from your heart wall now? And maybe we get a yes answer, strong. Okay, is it in column A? Maybe that's weak. So it's in column B. Is it in one of the odd rows? There are 6 rows. Maybe that's a yes. Okay, is it in row 1? No. Row 3? Maybe it's in row 3. Okay, well, is it pride or shame or shock? And then we get a strong one. And then we can ask, well, do we need to know more about this? And we might need to figure out when it happened. Usually that's about it. So we find out maybe it's grief, and it turns out it was from age 18, you had a breakup, or who knows. And then we release that emotion by just swiping a few times. And so usually we can clear a person's heart wall in anywhere from 1 to 3 sessions, a session being the release of anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 or so trapped emotions.
Really good. Describe for us, and those just kind of listening in, and maybe those that would come to, to see one of your practitioners, this swiping process. I'd like them to get a sense of what that is and what's happening in that process.
Well, every single person has a meridian system in their body, and the meridians can be thought of as being like little rivers of energy that flow just under the skin. Well, there's one particular meridian that we're interested in, and that's the governing meridian. And that meridian begins at the tailbone, and it flows straight up the back of the neck, over the top of the head, right in the middle, and right down the middle of the nose to the inside of the upper lip. That meridian happens to be connected to all the other meridians and as an energy vessel, an energy reservoir. And what we have found is that when we put magnetic energy into that meridian with intention, by just swiping a few times from the forehead over the top of the head to the back of the neck or down the back, we can use any length of that meridian to put our intention energy into the whole entire body. And that energy goes into that meridian and then into all the meridians. And the effect is that we can release a trapped emotion that has been made ready to be released by asking those questions and satisfying the subconscious mind's need to have whatever necessary brought to conscious awareness about that particular experience. So it's a really fast process.
Well, it sounds like it gets to be, which is kind of a nice thing. It's not, we're going to get, some results in, months and months and months, or something almost immediate, or maybe in a handful of sessions. What do we know is happening, let's say, neurobiologically? Do we know anything about that piece, as that magnetic energy is kind of being maybe dispersed or dispensed of in a way that has been blocking once upon a time, but now it's freeing? What's going on?
Well, anecdotally, what we see, and we're hoping to do more research beginning this year on heart rate coherence and heart rate variability and some other things. But what we're seeing anecdotally is we're seeing all kinds of things shift and change and improve. When trapped emotions are released, pain oftentimes significantly reduces or completely disappears. We find that people who are dealing with depression and anxiety, phobias, panic attacks, PTSD, eating disorders, self-sabotage of all kinds, we see all of those things improve. In my own practice, during the last 10 years, most of the people that I saw had been told there was really no hope for them at all in Western medicine. So they would come to me as a last resort. And as I mentioned, one of the things that I would do is I would test the balance of all the organs and glands and chakras and meridians. And it wouldn't be unusual with these patients to find every organ and every gland out of balance.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And many chakras and most of the meridians. Sometimes with those people, Graham, what I would do is I would just work on their heart wall and remove the heart wall. Then I would come back and recheck all those organs and glands and chakras and meridians. And I would find that 80% of all those things would now be happy and balanced again. So there's a
beautiful finding.
Yeah, there's a huge connection between the heart and, of course, the whole rest of the body, more so than we really understand yet. So those are some of the things that we see, that all of these kinds of symptoms improve, things get better. And we don't promote the body code or the emotion code or the belief code as a cure for any disease. These are just ways to find the blocks that are in a person's way of really healing innately, naturally.
Yeah. I want to talk just and build upon what you were just sharing. You're watching people report really significant changes in their lives. Go back over some of the things that people are saying. Hey, I walked in here today and I'm walking out over maybe a handful of sessions, and here's how my life has changed, and here's what it's looking like now.
Oh my gosh, every day we get new testimonials from people all over the world. We've got over 10,000. It could be 20,000 now. I don't even know. That was years ago, from people. And some of the things that they say are, I feel peace now for the first time in my life. People have told us for the first time they're able to actually feel love, to experience joy, as well as, the dissipation of all kinds of physical and mental and emotional symptoms. People fall in love who never thought they would. I mean, it's really unbelievable.
It's interesting what you're saying right there. It's kind of a cool, a cool piece of this. Sometimes it's, I feel good not to be in pain anymore. I feel like my depression's resolved, or my PTSD or trauma aren't quite as, problematic in my life. But you're talking about the other side of that coin. The other side of the coin is I get to take in life, relationships, other people, things that have always been out there, but have never been accessible to me because of these walls that I've had, or this trauma that I've carried unknowingly. It's blocked my ability to be receptive of, and to be able, really maybe for the first time, to immerse myself in these things that life really has to offer me. So I'm not just, hey, my pain's gone. That's great. But now I get to come into life in a brand new way.
Yeah. People report how their relationships change. Yeah, it's just, and it's always in a really positive way. So I keep telling people that this isn't about me. It's really about the higher power. It's really about God. How, whatever words you might want to use to refer to God, higher power, source energy, creator, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. I think we're all talking about the same thing. And this work is coming into the world at a time when the world is in transition, in transformation. And I think it's part of this expansion of consciousness that's happening in the world. I think that every day the world is expanding a little more in its consciousness, and it's never going to go back ever to where it was. There's a whole nother world that is coming fast, and it's going to be a totally different world than what we've ever known before. And it's very exciting to me.
Yeah, it's very exciting. You're doing some really great work. We're kind of winding down on our show for today, but I love you as we begin to kind of close to leave our listeners with a word about the restorative power of our consciousness minds you're talking about today, but just give us kind of a closing word and the potential really that we all have once we're able to release this emotional baggage.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand a couple of things. One thing is that your body, even though it seems really solid, is actually made of pure energy. And that might seem hard to understand, but that literally is the truth. And that's why Einstein said the medicine of the future is going to be the medicine of frequencies. Well, the beautiful thing is that we now know what this medicine of frequencies looks like. And it looks like this work that we're doing, the emotion code. And that's the first place where you can start to learn about this. The beauty of this is that you can do this. In fact, our company purpose is healing the world by empowering you, the individual. You can do this. You can help yourself. You can heal yourself in so many cases. There's always going to be a need for Western medicine, of course, but there's so much you can do to help yourselves, your loved ones, your family members. That's one of the other beautiful things that's happening around the world is that people are reporting that their families are being healed by this work. So that's important to realize and remember. You're a being of energy, and this kind of healing doesn't look like anything that we're used to. It just looks totally different. But once you start to explore it, you start to realize, wow, yeah, this does work. Dad's back pain is gone, or Shirley's finally able to get pregnant and have a baby. That those are the kind of things that we're seeing. So
Really
it's pretty
good.
fun.
Really, yeah, it's got to be. And that's exciting for people. That's a message of hope for sure. Brad, you've now written 2 books. Your first is The Emotion Code, and your newest, The Body Code, Unlocking the Body's Ability to Heal Itself. You've also developed a certification program for those in the healing professions to become certified energy healing practitioners. And you now have a Body Code app.
Mhm.
I'd love for our listeners to be able to follow up with you today on how to learn more about you, Brad, and also have access to your books and learn more about the certification program as well as your app. So tell us how to do so, would you please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, our main website is discoverhealing.com. And of course, the books are available, the Emotion Code, the Body Code, they're available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Audible, of course, so you can listen to them. And on discoverhealing.com, you can find out a bit more about certification. We have 3 levels of certification. The Emotion Code's level 1, Body Code's level 2, and Belief Code's level 3. And we have really a very complete healing system that's very fast, very effective. And once you start to find out about this, you realize, wow, this is actually really awesome and really amazing. And it has nothing to do with me. I'm just the person that the higher power chose to bring these healing arts into the world. But it's time to find out about this because every single person in this world has this innate ability to be able to heal and help other people. And so what this work does is it gives that ability back to you in a very simple, easy way.
I really appreciate that kind of closing message. The ability to heal is part of how our bodies are designed. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and our body wants to heal, and it's been designed to do just that. And you're giving us, if it's got the ability to do it, how do we unlock that ability to heal in the way that it's been designed to do? So thank you for coming back on our show today. It was great the first time around. Today's just adding a nice capstone on our first time, and I thank you for your time with us today and all that you're doing around this.
Well, thank you so much, Graham. It's really been great to be on your show. Thanks for having me back.
Been nice to have you here. I also want to thank you, our listeners, for joining Brad and me today. It's always great to have you with us as well. Regarding our episode today, I want to remind you that it and its resources and all of our other shows can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/PHT. Thanks again for being with us on this show, and we'll look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Tribe Network, all rights reserved.